The mountain air hit my lungs as I stepped out of my rental car at Pine Ridge Resort. It was the first Friday in May, and the family reunion was already in full swing at what everyone still called Grandpa's cabin. I could hear voices carrying across the valley, my mother's laugh, my brother David's booming declarations, the clink of beer bottles on the deck. I'd driven 6 hours from Seattle, where I supposedly worked as a property manager for various clients. That's what I'd told my family for the past 8 years. They assumed it meant I showed apartments and collected rent checks for absentee landlords. They weren't entirely wrong, but the scale was somewhat different than they imagined. Emily, my cousin Jennifer, spotted me first, waving from the deck. "We thought you weren't coming." "Traffic," I said simply, pulling my hiking backpack from the trunk. I'd learned years ago that fewer words meant fewer questions. My mother appeared at the railing, her expression already set in that particular way that meant she'd made a decision about my life. At 62, Margaret Anderson still ran our family with the efficiency of a corporate CEO, which she had been before retirement. Every family gathering had an agenda, and I could tell this one was going to be about me. "Emily, good. We need to have a family discussion." She didn't say hello. "David's inside." I climbed the wooden steps to the deck, the same steps Grandpa had built 40 years ago, when this was just a small 2-bedroom cabin on 5 acres. The view still took my breath away. Endless mountains rolling into the distance, pine trees thick enough to get lost in, the valley stretching out below. "There she is." David emerged from inside, already on his third beer if the empties on the table were any indication. My older brother had the Anderson height and the Anderson confidence, both of which he wore like armor. At 37, he worked in pharmaceutical sales and made good money, which he spent even faster. "Mom told you we're having the family talk." "Just heard." I set my backpack down and accepted a beer from Jennifer, who mouthed sorry at me. The family filtered onto the deck. My Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, Jennifer and her husband Tom, David's wife Melissa, and my mother. 8 people who loved me, I was sure, but who had never quite understood what to do with me. Mom stood, which meant the meeting was starting. "We've been talking about Grandpa's property. It's been sitting here for 3 years since he passed, and we need to make a decision about what to do with it." I took a long drink of my beer and said nothing. This was my strategy for family gatherings: observe, listen, wait. "David has proposed something that makes a lot of sense," Mom continued. "He and Melissa want to take over the cabin. Use it regularly, maintain it properly, maybe even expand it for the grandchildren." David jumped in, unable to contain himself. "We're thinking a whole renovation. Add another bedroom, update the kitchen, maybe build a garage for the ski equipment. Turn it into a real family headquarters." "That sounds nice," I said neutrally. The thing is, Mom's voice took on that careful tone she used when delivering news she knew I wouldn't like. "We think it makes sense to transfer ownership to David. He'll actually use it. You're always so busy in Seattle with your property management work, and you barely make it up here twice a year." There it was. Not a discussion, a decision already made, with me invited to simply agree. "David will use it," Uncle Robert added supportively. "He's got the family, the time, the interest in maintaining it." I looked at my brother, who was trying to appear humble but couldn't quite hide his satisfaction. "You've already started planning." "Well, yeah." He pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. "Melissa and I have been working with a contractor. We're thinking exposed beams in the living room, granite countertops, maybe a hot tub on the expanded deck. And we want to throw a big summer party." Already sent out invitations to like 50 people. "Memorial Day weekend, really christen the place properly." 50 people. I raised my eyebrows. "It'll be great." Melissa chimed in. "A real celebration, new beginning for the family property." Mom was watching me carefully. "We know you loved Grandpa, Emily." "We all did, but this is about being practical. David can give this place the attention it deserves." I finished my beer and stood up. "Can I think about it?" "What's to think about?" David's voice had an edge now. "I'm offering to take on all the responsibility, all the maintenance costs, all the taxes. You'd be free of the burden." "I didn't know it was a burden," I said quietly. "Come on, Em, when's the last time you were even up here?" "Christmas, and you stayed one night." "I was here 2 weeks ago, actually," I said. "Came up midweek to check on some things." "Check on what?" Mom asked. "Just things. Look, I need to stretch my legs after the drive. I'm going to take a walk." I grabbed my backpack before anyone could object. Emily, we need an answer this weekend. Mom called after me. The lawyers need to start the paperwork. I waved acknowledgement without turning around and headed down the trail that led into the forest behind the cabin. The moment I was out of sight, I pulled out my phone and called my property manager, Marcus Webb. Hey, it's Emily. I'm on site. Can you send me the updated maintenance reports for cabins 12 through 18 and the occupancy rates for Memorial Day weekend? Sending now, Marcus replied. I could hear keyboard clicking. We're at 97% booked for the holiday weekend. Just cabin 31 and 38 still available. The new roof on cabin 23 is done. Came in under budget. And the trail repairs you authorized are complete. Hikers are already posting about the improvements. Perfect. I'm going to do a walkthrough of the common areas tomorrow morning. Can you have Denise meet me at the main lodge at 7? Will do. Everything okay? You sound stressed. I laughed. Family reunion. My brother wants Grandpa's cabin. There was a pause. Does he know? Nobody does. And I'd like to keep it that way until I figure out how to handle this. I'd bought Pine Ridge Resort 3 years ago, 6 months before Grandpa died. He was the only one who knew. He's the one who told me it was for sale. The owner was retiring, his kids didn't want the business, and Grandpa had called me because he knew I'd been quietly building a property management portfolio since I was 24. That place has good bones, Grandpa had said when he called. 43 cabins, main lodge, staff housing, the whole valley. Owner wants $4 million, probably take 3.7. I'd flown up that weekend, walked every trail, inspected every cabin, reviewed the books. The resort was profitable, but undermarketed, maintained adequately, but not excellently. I could see the potential immediately. I'd offered 3.6 million. The owner accepted within 24 hours. The financing had been complex. I'd had to leverage my existing properties, bring in a silent partner for 30% equity, and take a substantial mortgage. But the numbers worked. The resort generated enough cash flow to cover expenses, pay down debt, and fund gradual improvements. Grandpa had been proud. You're doing it right, Emmy. Building something real, something lasting. He'd made me promise to keep it quiet from the family. Your mother will have opinions. David will want to be involved. Let them think it's someone else's resort. Let them keep coming up here as guests. You do what you need to do to make it successful. 2 months after I closed on the property, Grandpa had a stroke. He was gone within a week. His cabin, the original property he'd owned outright, sat right in the middle of what was now my resort. In his will, he'd left it to his grandchildren, Emily and David Anderson, in equal shares. But he'd added a clause that gave me first right of refusal if David ever wanted to sell or transfer his half. The family had been surprised. They'd assumed Grandpa would leave the cabin to all of them, or at least give them some say in it. But Grandpa had been clear. It went to his grandchildren, period. For 3 years, David and I had technically co-owned the cabin. I paid the property taxes and insurance out of my resort operational budget. David didn't know that. He assumed the family trust covered it. He came up a few times a year, treated it like a free vacation home, and never asked questions about the actual financial details. Now he wanted it entirely. Wanted to renovate it, expand it, treat it as his personal project. I hiked for 2 hours, checking trails as I went. The new signage looked good. The bridge over Willow Creek was solid. The wildflowers were coming in beautifully along the ridge trail. Guests would love it. When I returned to the cabin, the family was making dinner, grilled salmon, corn on the cob, the works. I joined in quietly, chopping vegetables, listening to David talk about his renovation plans in increasing detail. The contractor said we could break ground by July, if we get the permits in soon, he was saying. We'll have to stay in a hotel in town during the worst of it, but it'll be worth it. Have you gotten estimates? I asked. Ballpark is like 90,000, but we're thinking of it as an investment. Increases the property value significantly. And you're planning to pay for that how? I kept my voice casual. David exchanged a look with Melissa. We were thinking the family could contribute. It benefits everyone, right? When we're done we'll have this amazing family compound. By family you mean, well, Mom and Dad have the retirement fund. Susan and Robert could pitch in. It's an investment in family legacy. I set down my knife. So you want the cabin transferred to you, and you want everyone else to pay for your renovations. It's not like that, David said defensively. We'd be doing all the work, managing the project, dealing with contractors, while living in my free vacation home, I finished. Our free vacation home, he corrected. Half yours, half mine. But since I'm the one willing to put in the effort, I think it's reasonable, Mom interjected. Emily, you're not using the place. David wants to invest his time and energy. The family helping with costs makes sense. I looked around the table. They were all nodding, even Jennifer, who usually stayed out of family politics. Let me think about it, I said again. David's jaw tightened. What's to think about, Em? Seriously, why are you being difficult about this? I'm not being difficult, I'm being careful. This is Grandpa's property. I want to make sure we're honoring what he wanted. He wanted it used and loved, Aunt Susan said gently. David's offering that. I excused myself after dinner and walked down to the main lodge. It was a 10-minute hike through the trees, following the path that guests used, but my family never had. Why would they? They didn't know the resort existed, at least not as mine. Denise Kowalski, my resort manager, was in the office finishing paperwork. At 55, she'd been running mountain lodges for 30 years. I'd hired her year 2, and she'd transformed the operation. Emily, hey, didn't expect to see you tonight. Family drama, I said, dropping into the chair across from her desk. They want to give David full ownership of Cabin 1. Denise winced. Cabin 1 was what we called Grandpa's place in our internal systems. It sat on the prime location, best view, closest to the main lodge, most private. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. What's our Memorial Day booking look like? She pulled up the computer. 41 of 43 cabins booked. Guests start arriving Thursday. We've got the usual activities scheduled. Guided hikes, kayaking on the lake, the Saturday night bonfire, Sunday morning yoga. David's planning a party at Cabin 1 that weekend. 50 people. Denise's eyebrows shot up. During peak guest weekend, that'll be chaos. Parking alone will be a nightmare, and if his party guests start wandering around thinking they have access to resort amenities. I know. You have to tell them, Emily. This has gone on long enough. She was right, but I didn't know how. How do you casually mention to your family that you own the entire resort they've been visiting for 3 years? That every time they checked in as guests of Cabin 1, the staff were quietly notifying me. That the nice manager they occasionally chatted with reported directly to me. Give me until Sunday, I said. I'll figure something out. Saturday morning, I was up at dawn. I met Denise at the main lodge, and we did a complete property walkthrough. The cabins were in excellent shape. We'd replaced 12 roofs over the winter, updated the plumbing in the older units, and refinished the hardwood floors in cabins 8 through 15. The investment was paying off. Our online reviews had gone from 3.8 stars to 4.7 in 2 years. Cabin 29 needs new deck furniture, I noted, photographing the weather-damaged chairs, and Cabin 34's grill is shot. I'll order replacements Monday, Denise said, making notes on her tablet. We checked the main lodge kitchen, where staff was prepping for the weekend influx. The chef had planned a special Memorial Day menu, barbecue dinner on Saturday, brunch on Sunday. Guests loved the food. Everything looks great, I told Denise. You've done an amazing job. We've done an amazing job, she corrected. You hired well, you funded properly, you trusted us to execute. That's good ownership. By the time I hiked back to Cabin 1, it was nearly 10. The family was having breakfast on the deck, and David was on his phone showing Uncle Robert contractor photos. Perfect timing, David said. Robert thinks we should go even bigger, add a whole second story, make it 4 bedrooms instead of 3. That would require major structural work, I said. That's what contractors are for. Look, I need to know if you're on board. The party's in 3 weeks, and I want to be able to tell everyone about the renovation plans. Mom set down her coffee. Emily, honey, we need a decision. This is getting silly. I looked at my brother, his confident smile, his assumptions, his complete lack of awareness that he was planning a party on property I controlled. I thought about Grandpa, about his advice to build quietly, to let people underestimate me. But I also thought about the resort, about the guests arriving next week, about the careful operation we'd built. Okay, I said. Let's talk about this properly. David, you're planning 50 people for Memorial Day weekend, maybe 60 now. The guest list keeps growing. And you're planning to use the cabin, the deck, probably the surrounding trails and common areas. Well, yeah, it's a party. People will want to explore. Have you thought about parking? 60 cars can't fit in the cabin driveway. David waved dismissively. They can park along the access road. It'll be fine. The access road is private property. It's Forest Service land, David said confidently. Public access. I pulled out my phone and brought up the property survey. It's actually not. The access road is privately owned. So is everything from the main entrance to the valley ridge. About 1,200 acres total. How do you know that? Melissa asked. Because I looked it up. I zoomed in on the survey map. See, this entire valley is privately held. Has been since the 1970s when the original resort was established. David squinted at my phone. What resort? Pine Ridge Resort, the business that owns and operates 43 vacation cabins in this valley. Wait, this whole area is a resort? Jennifer looked surprised. I thought it was just forest with some random cabins. There's a main lodge, staff housing, maintained trails, kayak rentals, guided hikes. It's a full-service vacation destination, booked solid most weekends. Mom was frowning. How do you know all this? Because I've been managing it for 3 years. I kept my voice level. I bought Pine Ridge Resort 6 months before Grandpa died. He helped me find it, actually. Told me it was a good investment. The deck went silent. David's smile had frozen. You own this place, he said slowly. I do. Well, 70%. I have a silent investor for the other 30, but operational control is mine. That's impossible, David said. You're a property manager. You manage apartments. I manage properties, I corrected. Plural. I started with a duplex when I was 24, then a small apartment building, then 3 more buildings, then I partnered on a commercial property. By the time I was 29, I had enough equity and lending power to buy this resort. It was undervalued, undermarketed, but profitable. Why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice was sharp. Grandpa asked me not to. He said you'd have opinions, that David would want to be involved, that it would complicate things. He was right, wasn't he? David stood up abruptly. This is bullshit. You've been lying to us for 3 years. I've never lied. I told you exactly what I do. I manage properties. I just didn't specify which ones or how many. You let us come up here like regular guests. You are guests. Cabin 1 is still half yours, per Grandpa's will. You've never paid for your stays because you're family. But yes, technically, every time you visit, you're a guest at my resort. Melissa was staring at me. When we checked in last Christmas, and that woman at the lodge asked if we were guests of Cabin 1. She was confirming your relationship to me. Standard procedure. Uncle Robert leaned back in his chair. How big is this operation, Emily? 43 rental cabins. Average occupancy rate of 73% annually. Higher in summer and winter. Main lodge with commercial kitchen. Staff housing for 1,200 acres of land. Annual revenue around 2.1 million. Expenses around 1.4 million. Debt service another 400,000. We're profitable and growing. The numbers hung in the air. I watched them do the math, watched their expressions change as they realized what I'd built. That's why you were hiking yesterday, Jennifer said slowly. You were inspecting the property. I do a full walkthrough every time I visit. Check on maintenance, guest satisfaction, staff needs. Marcus, my main property manager, sends me weekly reports, but I like to see things firsthand. David sat back down heavily. So when I said I wanted to throw a party with 60 people, you were proposing to throw an unsanctioned event on my resort property during peak guest weekend, yes. And the renovations would require my approval as property owner permits from the county, that would need my signature, and would likely violate the zoning regulations for the resort operation. Mom was very quiet, which meant she was processing. Finally she said, Grandpa knew about this. He's the one who told me about the sale. He was proud of what I was building. He wanted me to keep doing it without family interference. Why? David's voice was bitter. Why didn't he think I could handle it? It's not about handling it, I said gently. It's about what each of us is good at. You're excellent at sales, at relationships, at the pharmaceutical business. This is what I'm good at: operations, property management, building sustainable businesses. Grandpa understood that. Aunt Susan spoke up. So what happens now? With the cabin? That's what I wanted to talk about. David, you and I co-own Cabin 1. It sits in the middle of my resort. I need to be able to control how it's used, because guest experience matters. Unsanctioned parties, major construction, heavy traffic, all of that impacts my business. So you want to buy me out? David said flatly. I want to offer you two options. Option 1. I buy your 50% share. I'll pay fair market value, based on comparable cabin sales in the area. You walk away with probably $250,000. David's eyes widened slightly at the number. Option 2. You keep your 50%, but we formalize an agreement. You can use the cabin up to 4 weeks per year, scheduled around resort bookings. No unsanctioned parties over 20 people. Any renovations or modifications require my approval and have to comply with resort standards and zoning. In exchange, I continue to cover all taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Those are my only options, David asked. Those are the options that work for my business. Yes. What about my party? I pulled out my phone again and opened my calendar. Memorial Day weekend were 97% booked. 60 extra people would overwhelm the parking, the trails, and the common areas. It's not feasible, so I have to cancel. After I already invited everyone. You'll have to reschedule or relocate. Yes, I'm sorry. If you'd asked me first, I could have told you it wouldn't work. David looked at Melissa, then at Mom. This is unbelievable, is it? I asked. You wanted to take full ownership of property you didn't fully own, renovate it with other people's money, and throw a massive party without checking if it was actually feasible. I'm just pointing out the realities. Mom had been watching me carefully. Now she said, Emily, I think we've underestimated you. Most people do. I prefer it that way. Less pressure, fewer expectations, more freedom to build. Grandpa knew that about you, she said softly. He always said you were the quiet one who saw everything. I nodded. He taught me that. Taught me to listen more than I talk, to build more than I announce, to let results speak louder than intentions. The family sat with that for a long moment. Jennifer broke the silence. Can we get a tour of the resort? I can't believe we've been coming here for 3 years and had no idea. I smiled. Sure, let me text Denise. She's my resort manager. She can show you around properly. Wait, David said. The woman we've been chatting with at the lodge. She works for you. She runs day-to-day operations. She's incredible. 30 years of hospitality experience. We spent the afternoon touring Pine Ridge Resort. I watched my family's faces as Denise showed them the main lodge, the commercial kitchen, the activity center where guests could rent kayaks and mountain bikes. We walked the groomed trails, checked out the newer cabins with their updated amenities, visited the staff housing where 8 full-time and 4 seasonal employees lived. You employ 12 people. Uncle Robert kept shaking his head. This is a real business. It's a very real business, Denise confirmed. Emily's been an excellent owner. She invests in the property, trusts her staff, responds quickly to issues. We've grown revenue by 37% in 3 years. David was quiet throughout the tour. I could see him processing, recalculating his assumptions about his little sister. That evening, we had dinner at the main lodge. Denise insisted, and the chef prepared a special meal for my family. We sat at the large table by the windows overlooking the valley, and I watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. This is really beautiful, Mom said. I'm sorry we didn't know. Sorry we underestimated what you were doing. It's okay. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just trying to build something sustainable. David pushed food around his plate. Finally he said, I want to take option 2. Keep my share of the cabin, but work with you on the terms. Yeah, I don't love it, but I see why you need control. And honestly, he looked up at me. I'm impressed. This is way bigger than anything I understood. Grandpa was smart to back you. He backed both of us. I said, just in different ways. You got his business advice for your career. I got his real estate wisdom. Will you really not let me have the party? Not Memorial Day weekend, no. But talk to Denise about other dates. Maybe late June or early September. We can work something out that doesn't conflict with guest bookings. Melissa leaned forward. Could David and I maybe help out sometimes? With the resort, not running it, she added quickly. But David's good with people, and I used to do event planning. Maybe we could contribute something. I looked at Denise, who gave a tiny nod. Let's talk about it. There might be ways you could add value. Marketing maybe, or guest relations. But I held up a hand. It would be a professional relationship, scheduled, compensated with clear boundaries. I think we can handle that, David said. The Memorial Day weekend arrived 3 weeks later. I drove up Thursday afternoon to oversee the final preparations. Guests were already checking in, families excited for the long weekend. The weather forecast was perfect. Cabin 1 sat empty and quiet. David had canceled his party, or rather postponed it to mid-June, on a weekend when we only had 60% occupancy. Melissa was working with Denise on a more manageable event planned for 30 people instead of 60. Saturday evening, we held the traditional bonfire at the lake. 40-some guests gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows, sharing stories. I sat slightly apart, watching the flames and the families, thinking about Grandpa. A couple approached me, guests from cabin 17. Are you the owner? The woman asked. I am. We just wanted to say thank you. This place is incredible. We've been coming for 2 years now, and it keeps getting better. The trail improvements, the new activities, the food. You're doing something special here. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. After they left, Denise sat down next to me. You did good, boss. We did good, I corrected. You told your family. That took guts. It was time. Couldn't keep hiding it forever. You weren't hiding. You were building. There's a difference. The fire crackled and sparked. In the distance I could hear laughter from cabin 22, music from cabin 31. My resort, my business, my legacy from Grandpa. Monday morning, I did a final walkthrough before heading back to Seattle. The guests were checking out, already planning their return trips. Revenue for the weekend would hit projections. Staff performed beautifully. Everything worked. I stopped at cabin 1 before leaving. David had left a note on the kitchen counter. Thanks for the tour. Thanks for being patient with me. Grandpa was right about you. See you in June for the party. The smaller, better planned one. I smiled, and tucked the note in my pocket. Then I locked up the cabin, shouldered my backpack, and started the hike back to my car. The mountain air was clear and clean. The sun was bright on the peaks, and somewhere I like to think Grandpa was watching, proud of the quiet kid who learned to build empires, while everyone else was busy talking about them. Pine Ridge Resort had 43 cabins, 1,200 acres, and a future as bright as the mountain morning. And I had a family who finally understood that success doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just gets built, one property at a time, by the person everyone underestimated. I drove down the mountain toward Seattle, already planning the next improvements, the next expansion, the next phase of growth. Because that's what builders do. We don't stop to celebrate, we just keep building. And that's exactly what Grandpa had taught me to do.